Blake Topmeyer with Nick Suss after the Ole Miss 31-17 victory over LSU on Saturday in a game that really wasn't even as close as this final score might indicate. Nick, really a lot of things clicking for Ole Miss in this game. Running game really got going strong. Defense played arguably its best game of the season. And even on a day where Matt Corral was, by his standards, I thought, sort of pedestrian, by his standards, really, I thought, a pretty complete victory.
Yeah, this was the best game Ole Miss has played probably since the bowl game against Indiana, maybe since before then. This is a defense that gave up 7 points to a starting quarterback who put up 49 last week. This is a defense that, 2 weeks ago, they gave up 51 points to Arkansas, a week after Arkansas had been shut out. And now they're giving up 17 points to a team that was scoring about 33 a game. The defense has completely turned things around these last 2 weeks, and they could put up 12 straight performances like this and you'd still be skeptical after seeing what Ole Miss's defense looked like against Alabama and Arkansas. But the defense stood out incredibly, and then Snoop Connor and Jerry Ely were, 240 combined rushing yards or something between those two guys. Really gave them a jolt on the ground and controlled the game, slowed down the game compared to last week when they needed 101 plays to win by 5.
I thought it was interesting because we heard from Lane Kiffin on Monday act like maybe Matt Corral wasn't going to be playing today, and I think we both kind of felt like he was going to play. That was subterfuge, and it was interesting. Matt Corral said afterwards, well, I knew all along I was going to play, but it didn't seem 100%, but what did you think about the way he kind of, gutted out this performance on a day where he didn't have his full complement of weapons, and then also, probably wasn't 100% health-wise either?
He's really good. On a day when there were 6 Mannings in the stadium, he was the best quarterback in the stadium, and that's pretty much the way you can put it. He played well, threw for something like 180, ran 12 times for 24, and that's counting sacks. He was good. He was good. He led this team where, there was a point where the receivers on the field were a freshman who'd never caught a pass, a grad transfer from Western Kentucky, and a converted DB. And he was still completing passes to those guys. He looked good. He commanded the game well, and the leadership he talked about all offseason and the comfort in the scheme he talked about all offseason really shows in a game where he doesn't need to throw for 400 to win.
This team's sitting at 6-1 now, and if you actually go back to last season, it's now 10-2 in its last 12 games. We've talked about Matt Corral as playing as well as any quarterback in the country. The defense coming off of its best performance of the season. What is the ceiling for this team, do you think?
Yeah, it's going to be really interesting to see how they play on the road next week against Auburn. 2 true road games this year. Alabama was a rough game. Tennessee was a very close-fought game. We'll see how they do against a team that really runs the ball well, really slows the game down, plays really, high-caliber defense, and can kind of expose some of the flaws we've seen exposed from Ole Miss this year. But, after that Auburn game, I think they will probably be favored every time they play for the rest of the year. Home against A&M, home against Liberty, home against Vanderbilt, and on the road for the Egg Bowl. This is a team that, starting to feel a little more realistic that they could win 10 games before December. I still think that's a really high number to chase for a team in year 2 of a rebuild, but that starts to feel more and more realistic as the weeks go on.
Yeah, to me, there's not much that's out of play for this team. It does feel a little far-fetched, but not totally out of play. If Alabama suffers another loss, suddenly the SEC championship becomes in play for Ole Miss. Sugar Bowl, I think, is in play at this point. Truly, I think this team still has a lot on the table, and it seems like a team that is aware of that. Can you kind of sense that? I felt like in post-game, these guys know that it seems like they know that there's still a lot out ahead of them.
Yeah, it's telling that this team just won its 6th game and nobody came close to mentioning, now we're bowl eligible.
Yeah.
6 wins is no longer the threshold. Last year going 5-5 was a, wow, look at what this team was able to do in an all-SEC schedule. That was a pretty quick turnaround. Now it's, if this team's not playing in the New Year's Six Bowl, there's going to be some fans who are disappointed. I still think a Citrus Bowl berth would not be a disappointment for this team. But, if they're not in the Sugar Bowl, Fiesta Bowl, Orange Bowl, one of those New Year's Six Bowls, there are going to be some people who say the season didn't live up to par. And for that to be something that has changed so quickly in 2 years from gosh, this time 2 years ago, there were 20,000 empty seats in October for games against New Mexico State. I mean, just people weren't that interested. And now Ole Miss is playing like one of the 10 best teams in the country.
Yeah, 6-1, coming off a 31-17 victory over LSU. For all the coverage from Nick, from myself, you can check us out at ClarionLedger.com.